I never imagined a simple text could make my hands shake the way they did that morning. The words lit up my phone screen like a flare, searing straight into my memory. You won't be coming on the family cruise. My wife thinks it should be just family. The message came from my son, my only child. The same son I had bought a house for not that long ago. A house I spent night after night making sure he could have, pouring in every bit of my savings, calling it a gift from the heart, a solid start for his growing family. And now suddenly I wasn't family enough to join them on their vacation. I stared at that message, my chest tightening, ears pounding with the rush of blood. My fingers, cold and rigid, hovered over the keyboard before I typed just one word. That single word carried the weight of everything I couldn't say, every ounce of pain, betrayal, and the gut-punch realization of where I stood in their lives. But deep inside I was screaming, so I'm good enough to buy you a house but not to sit at your dinner table? Not to join your fancy cruise? My heart thundered. My breaths turned shallow. But my face stayed calm, almost blank, like I'd gone numb. That version of me, the one who always kept her mouth shut, always found reasons to forgive their little jabs, that version died right then. My phone buzzed again. This time it was from his wife, Amanda. Polite, distant. I hope you understand. It's just simpler for everyone this way. Simpler. Sure, Amanda. It's simpler now that the house is in your name. Simpler now that you think your future's all secured. I set the phone down on the table, hands still trembling slightly. But the tears? They were gone. Because something else had woken up inside me, a part that had been quiet for too long. A part that was done being embarrassed. They thought I'd just take it. But they were wrong. The silence in my house after that felt louder than anything. I sat in my kitchen, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. The morning sun stretched across the tile floor, lighting up the wooden chairs I'd picked, the countertops I paid to have redone, the curtains I'd sewn by hand, all for them. For Jacob and Amanda. For the family I believed I was building. Now it just looked like a gallery of bad decisions. The walls were lined with photos from trips I'd paid for. Disney when Jacob was still a kid. Cancun when Amanda first joined the picture. That snowy Christmas cabin. Yep, I paid for that one too. I'd always called it my gift to them. Always giving, always explaining away their silences. I remembered the housewarming last spring. The house I'd bought outright. No mortgage. No debt. Just a fresh start for them. It was the biggest thing I'd ever done for anyone. Amanda had grabbed my hands that day, her eyes glassy. Oh, Carol, you didn't have to do this. We're so grateful. You'll always have a room here. You know that. And of course I believed her. Because that's what mothers do, we believe. I remembered painting their master bedroom myself while they worked late shifts, choosing soft lavender because Amanda said it calmed her. I ordered furniture online, put it together in my garage. Every curtain rod, every lamp, every throw pillow. I picked it all out with love. I kept busy, convincing myself their growing distance was just stress, just life, just them figuring things out. But it wasn't. Now I saw the truth clearly. I'd become the fixer, the bank, the background help. And when I had nothing left to give, they stopped seeing me altogether. I was no longer Carol. I was just the purse. And once it was empty, they didn't need the woman holding it anymore. The next morning I couldn't stand the silence. I called my oldest friend, Diane. She was at my door within the hour. Like always. No questions. That's the thing about real friends, they know when words can wait. She stepped inside, took one look at me and knew. Tell me, she said softly, setting her bag down on the kitchen table. I slid my phone over to her. She read the message, jaw tightening, but didn't say anything right away. She just slowly shook her head like she'd seen it coming. Finally, she looked up and said, "They've been planning this, Carol." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. My voice came out small. I thought maybe it was just Amanda. That she got into his head. But Jacob, he's not like this. Diane pressed her lips together, then reached across the table and placed her hand on mine, firm and steady. You raised a good boy, but one who never had to struggle. You were always there to pick up the slack. And Amanda? He saw that. He saw exactly what she could turn him into. You made yourself small to make room for them. And now they think that's where you belong. Her words stung because they were true. I had spent years patching up every problem for Jacob. Canceling trips to pet sit their dog. Emptying my savings to cover their student loans. Running over every time Amanda said she needed help organizing. Always there. Always useful. Always convenient. It's time to protect yourself, Diane said gently, her tone firm. Seriously, before they try to take even more. I blinked at her, confused. Take more? They already have everything. Diane's eyes narrowed with concern. When's the last time you checked your bank accounts? She asked, her voice firmer now. Are you even sure your name is still on the deed? What about your investments, Carol? She looked straight through me. You're still trusting them. That hit like a slap. My chest tightened and my pulse kicked up. Honestly, I hadn't thought to look. Why would I? They were my family. Amanda handles most of the online payments, I admitted quietly. She said it was easier for taxes. Diane let out a sharp breath and leaned back, arms crossed tight. Carol, you need to log into everything today. And if anything even smells off, we go straight to a lawyer. I swallowed hard, a lump rising in my throat. My hands began to tremble again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was the slow, creeping shock of truth settling in. They hadn't seen me as a fragile old woman. They'd seen me as someone too trusting to question a thing. And that trust? It had become their weapon. As Diane waited for my answer, something deep inside me shifted. A small flicker buried under years of hurt flared up. I sat up straighter, steadier than I'd felt in days. All right, I said, my voice clear. We start today. Diane nodded once. Good. Because you're not finished. And they're not ready for what's coming. Sleep wouldn't come that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that cold little message again. Amanda's practiced smile. Jacob's blank expression. But above all, Diane's words echoed louder than the silence around me. You need to protect yourself now. At 2:17 a.m. I gave up trying to rest. My heart pounded as I reached for my laptop. For years, Amanda had offered to manage the online accounts. It's just easier, Carol. No need to worry about all that stuff at your age, she used to say in that honey-coated voice of hers. I wanted to believe she was helping, that she cared. But now, as my hands hovered over the keyboard, I felt something entirely different. Awareness. I typed in my logins, my fingers stiff with tension. The dashboard loaded as usual. It all looked fine. But that was the trap. It always looked fine. Slowly, carefully, I began clicking through everything. Checking savings, investments, statements. At first, nothing stood out. Just routine bills, groceries, the usual. But as I dug deeper into the history, a chill crept in. Dozens of small transfers just under the radar. Each labeled innocently. Home expenses, property repair, emergency maintenance. But I hadn't authorized any emergency repairs. I clicked further. The accounts showed secondary users. Linked cards. Ones that didn't belong to me. And there it was, Amanda's name. My stomach flipped. My hands froze on the keyboard. She had quietly attached her card to my accounts, siphoning funds slowly and steadily, maybe for months. Maybe longer. This wasn't just about leaving me out of a vacation. This wasn't family tension. This was theft. And Jacob? Was he just blind to it? Or did he know and choose not to care as long as the money kept flowing? A flush of heat surged through my chest. Not anger. Something colder. Something sharper. I closed the laptop softly and leaned back. The warm kitchen light cast faint shadows across the old family photos still hanging on the walls. But now those smiles looked like part of a scheme. I'd walked into it with open arms. They never loved me for who I was, just for what I could give. My throat tightened, but no tears came. Instead, I spoke into the quiet. You gambled with my kindness, Amanda. And my trust. I had always told myself that staying quiet made me strong. But that night I understood silence could cut just as deep. They thought they could discard me. They thought I wouldn't fight back. But they were wrong. By sunrise I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't scared. Just focused. I picked up the phone and called my financial advisor under the guise of a routine check-in. I didn't want to tip them off. Not yet. Not until I knew the full picture. Of course, Mrs. Franklin, Mr. Harlan answered, his voice warm as always. He'd handled my portfolio for years. What can I help you with this morning? I kept my voice calm. My son and daughter-in-law have been managing some of our home expenses lately. I just want to be sure things are still aligned with the original plan. I listened as he opened my file, clenching my hands tightly in my lap to keep them from shaking. He said after a pause. Everything appears stable overall, though I am noticing some recent movement. My chest tightened again. What kind of movement? He cleared his throat. Well, there have been several fund transfers. Mostly for what's listed as home improvements. A few larger ones labeled as design upgrades and contractor prepayments. I gripped the receiver harder. And who approved those? A moment of silence. Technically you did, he said gently. That is, your authorized representative account did. I felt my stomach drop. Which representative? That's when he hesitated for the first time. It looks like your secondary authorized user, Mrs. Amanda Franklin, initiated those transfers, Mr. Harlan explained gently. She has full access under the durable power of attorney you signed last spring. I closed my eyes for a second. The memory came back sharp and clear. Amanda had insisted I update the documents, just in case of an emergency. She even brought the notary herself, cheerful and smiling like she was doing me a favor. Of course she did. Thank you, Mr. Harlan, I said, my voice calm. Would you mind flagging all future transactions for my personal review before anything is processed? I've decided to be more involved from now on. He agreed right away. When I ended the call, I just sat there in the stillness. All the doubts I'd been wrestling with were gone. Amanda wasn't trying to help, she was setting the stage. She and Jacob had been laying the groundwork, quietly turning that house into their golden goose. My retirement wasn't theirs to spend, not yet, but they were already living like it was. I turned toward the windowsill where my late husband's locket rested, the one he gave me after our 30th anniversary. He would have spotted this from a mile away. He always warned me to stay cautious. But I had wanted to believe in the goodness of family so badly. For years I had shrunk myself down to avoid confrontation. But I finally understood that love without respect was just a prettier kind of prison. And now I'd found the key. Across the living room, my eyes settled on the empty shelf where a framed photo from Jacob and Amanda's housewarming used to sit. I'd taken it down 2 nights ago. The shelf looked better that way. Lighter. Freer. So did I. They had bet on my silence. And they were going to regret it. Later that day I took a walk to the park. I needed space, somewhere untouched by their greed. Somewhere that didn't remind me of furniture I bought or photographs of people who only saw me as convenient. The old oak tree was still standing just as it had been for decades. My husband used to sit beneath it every Sunday reading the paper while I fed the ducks. He always called it our quiet corner. I sank down on the bench beneath its big limbs and for a while I just breathed, letting the warm breeze lift some of the heaviness off my chest. And then softly, like he was sitting right there beside me, I whispered, "You would have seen through it, Richard. You would have told me." I reached for the locket hanging around my neck, my thumb brushing over the tiny engraved date, when we paid off our first home. Back when we were dreaming of the life we'd give our children. Back when Jacob was still that bright-eyed boy building forts in the yard, not plans behind my back. I bit down on my lip to keep it from quivering. I didn't want to cry. Not anymore. The tears had run dry. The next morning I was waiting outside my attorney's office before they even flipped the sign to open. Mr. Clayton had managed my legal affairs for years. Everything from our estate planning to the purchase of that house for Jacob and Amanda. Even the original paperwork Amanda had pushed me to sign for flexibility. I trusted her. I trusted all of them. Never again. He greeted me with his usual warm smile, though I could see the worry behind his eyes. "Carol, I wasn't expecting you so early. Everything all right?" I sat across from him and folded my hands neatly. "I need to reverse the house gift," I said evenly. His eyes widened slightly. "The property transferred to Jacob and Amanda?" "That's the one," I said with a nod. "I want it reversed. I want every asset locked down. I want all powers revoked and every authorization traced." He paused, not because he didn't agree but because he knew what that request meant. "Carol," he said gently, "this might stir things up." "They've already stirred it," I replied. I was just too blind to notice. He studied me for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "All right. We'll get started." I leaned in slightly. "And I want records. I want a full account of everything they've done using my name or my money. Every transfer. Every document Amanda signed." A flicker of approval crossed his face. "That's smart. If this escalates, we'll need proof." "It's going to escalate," I said calmly. "Let's not pretend it won't." He jotted a few notes, then looked up. "You may also want to consider bringing in a private investigator." I raised an eyebrow. "You really think that's necessary?" His voice lowered, but it stayed firm. Amanda isn't just pushing boundaries. She's planning long-term control. You've got substantial assets, Carol. If she's already shifting money around, there's a good chance she's building her own paper trail. Something she could use later. We need one of our own. Something concrete. The thought turned my stomach, not with fear but with a deep, steady sense of readiness. Do it, I told him. Find someone you trust. He nodded. We'll handle the legal side. The investigator can take care of the rest. And just like that, the tide began to turn. By the time I walked out of his office, I wasn't weighed down anymore. The mess wasn't fixed, not even close, but I was done playing defense. I wasn't sitting still, waiting for the next betrayal. I was in motion. As I got into my car, I caught my reflection in the mirror. And for the first time in a long time, I let a small, bitter smile rise to my lips. They wanted quiet. Then quiet they'd get. But not the kind they expected. Mine would be the kind that moves without sound and hits exactly where it needs to. The very next morning, something slid under my front door. I saw it the second I walked into the kitchen. A plain white envelope lying on the tile, the exact kind Amanda always used when dropping off paperwork she helped me manage. A sticky note sat on top, her handwriting unmistakable. Just sign when you're ready, Mom. This'll make everything easier while we're gone. I stood frozen. They were already off on their luxury cruise, sailing through sparkling blue water, clinking glasses, laughing under the sun. And even from 1,000 miles away, they were still trying to tighten their grip. My fingers trembled slightly as I peeled open the envelope. Inside was a clean stack of neatly typed documents, professional, polished. On the surface they looked ordinary. Just more updates, more amendments. Amanda had always known how to disguise control as kindness. But the deeper I read, the colder my chest became. Hidden beneath all the polite legal phrasing and talk of estate efficiency was a trap. A permanent, irrevocable power of attorney. Full control. Over my finances. My property. My medical care. My entire life. I stared at it, stunned but not surprised. This wasn't about help. It was about erasure. Amanda didn't want to wait until I was gone. She wanted to take over now, while I was still alive, just quietly enough to avoid looking like a villain. And Jacob, my own son, was he really unaware of what she was doing? Or did he just choose to look away, happy to benefit? Either way, the answer hurt just the same. This wasn't family anymore. It was a well-rehearsed act by two people wearing familiar masks. I slipped the unsigned documents right back into the envelope, set it back on the counter like nothing had happened, and walked away. Let them think I hadn't noticed. Let them believe I was still that woman who smiled politely and signed without reading. That woman didn't live here anymore. The private investigator would arrive later today. My attorney was already working on freezing every joint authorization. And now, thanks to Amanda's little gift, I had one more piece of hard proof, her signature attempt at a quiet takeover. I sat at the kitchen table as warm sunlight spilled across the floor. They still thought this was their game. But they had forgotten one thing. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. When I slid those unsigned papers back into their envelope, something clicked inside me. Not angry. Not afraid. Focused. They thought they could move while out of town while I stayed behind, dazed and overwhelmed by fine print. They thought I'd be grateful just to be involved. But they had no idea who they were dealing with anymore. By noon, I was back at Clayton's office. He didn't ask what brought me in. One look at my face and he just nodded. They tried to pull this while they're on vacation, I said, placing the envelope on his desk. He opened it slowly and scanned the pages, his expression tightening with every line. They're getting bold, he muttered. This isn't just unethical, it's predatory. Carol, if you had signed this, they'd have full authority. They could sell your house, empty your accounts, even decide where you live. He looked up, expecting fear. But I met his gaze with steady eyes. Then let's move faster, I said. He smiled faintly, respect showing through. Most of the documents are already prepped. We've filed the reversal on the house. We've started the account freezes. The investigator has already begun reviewing your financial history. He tapped the power of attorney papers. But after seeing this, we'll tighten our strategy. Aggressively. I leaned forward. Lock everything. No one touches a cent unless it's me. No withdrawals, no transfers, no joint anything. Understood, he said. We're also adding a protection clause to your estate. If they try to pursue anything legally, we'll have the full timeline of their manipulation documented and ready. I sat back and let myself exhale. My hands were steady. My shoulders light. For the first time in years, I wasn't scrambling to defend myself. I was building a fortress. One they wouldn't even see until it was too late. When I walked back into the house that afternoon, it looked exactly the same. But I didn't feel the same. I moved through each room like I was seeing it with fresh eyes. These walls no longer felt like a home. They were a record of my sacrifices, and their entitlement. I paused again at that empty shelf, the one where their housewarming photo used to sit. That staged, smiling photo full of false promises. I pulled open the drawer and took it out one last time. I stared at it long and hard. At their perfect grins, their perfect lies. You thought I existed to serve you, I whispered to the frame. My thumb hovered over Jacob's face. You thought I'd never say no. I turned the photo over and slid it deeper into the drawer, letting it disappear into the dark where it belonged. 2 days later, my phone rang. I recognized the number immediately. It was the private investigator. I picked up before the first ring finished. Mrs. Franklin, he said, voice level but weighed down by what he had to tell me. You might want to hear this. Without thinking, I pulled the curtains closed. Go ahead, I said. He didn't waste time. Your daughter-in-law recently submitted paperwork listing the property as collateral for a second mortgage. She's already started pre-approval with a private lender. Documents were filed last week. I didn't move. I just stood still, staring at nothing as his words settled in. They were already borrowing against the house I had given them freely, acting like it was theirs to leverage however they pleased. Did they explain how they acquired the house? I asked. They told the lender it was a family transfer, he said flatly. No mention of the power of attorney or the suspicious activity tied to your financial accounts. In fact, the lender seemed impressed by what they called generous family support. I bit the inside of my cheek hard, trying to keep my body from reacting. They weren't just dipping into my savings anymore. They were gambling with it. Building debt on top of my gift. Taking risks I had never agreed to. If I hadn't already set this plan in motion, if I hadn't asked the right questions when I did, I could have come home one day to find the house sold, the accounts emptied, and everything perfectly legal. Do they have any idea you found this? I asked. No, ma'am, he replied. Far as they know, you're still at home. Quiet. Unaware. I breathed in slowly. Good. Let's keep it that way. We ended the call. For a while, I just sat there in the dim light of my living room, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was active theft. And yet, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel panicked. I felt cold, sharp, and absolutely clear. They hadn't been careful because they thought I'd never look. They believed I was still the mother who would rather keep the peace than ask questions. But what they didn't know, what they still hadn't grasped, was that when a woman like me finally says no, it's already too late for the other side. I stood and smoothed the front of my blouse, gazing out the window at the house I had once been so proud to give them. And in that stillness I smiled. You gambled with my gift, Amanda, I whispered. Now I'll gamble with your future. That night I didn't turn on any lights. I sat quietly by the window, watching the street lamps stretch their shadows across the sidewalk. The world outside kept moving, unaware of the quiet reckoning happening within these walls. And for once I wasn't scared. I wasn't lost. I was calculating. They thought I'd collapse under the betrayal. That their sweet practiced little "we're just helping you, Mom" routine had worked. But what they didn't see was that their entire plan rested on one fragile thing: my trust. And I had finally let it go. A neighbor pulled into their driveway across the street, headlights brushing briefly over the empty spot on my mantel where the family photo used to sit. The shelf looked better now. Bare. Honest. I let out a breath and said softly, more to myself than anyone, they gambled with my gift. Now I'm gambling with their future. Felt good to say it. Really say it. I'd spent years swallowing every discomfort, telling myself that love meant putting up with things, that being needed was the same as being loved. But it wasn't. Not even close. They didn't love me. They loved what I gave. My money. My time. My readiness to give without limits. And once they no longer needed the person behind it all, they tossed her aside like a receipt. But they'd pushed themselves so far out on that limb I didn't even need to shake it. All I had to do was stop holding it steady. I closed my eyes and saw Amanda's face, the way she smiled when she wanted something, that sugary tone she used. "You're like a second mom to me, Carol." Lies. No one plans a quiet takeover of their own mother's life unless they've been thinking about it for a long, long time. No one buries full legal control inside helpful paperwork unless they know exactly what they're doing. I leaned back in my chair, spine straightening, and breathed in the night air pressing against the window glass. They had depended on my silence. But silence, I realized, had become my weapon. And I felt strong. Not angry. Not bitter. Strong. The next few days ran like clockwork. No emotion. No second-guessing. Just deliberate, focused action. Every morning I was at Clayton's office, with him on one side and the investigator on the other. We worked without distraction. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every slip-up was recorded. Every account Amanda had touched was mapped out, line by line. We left no detail unexamined. As the evidence stacked up, I didn't feel sick. I felt steadier. Clearer. Amanda hadn't just skimmed money. She'd used my retirement funds to pay off her own credit card debt. She had rerouted money into private investments under her maiden name. She had even used my name to secure pre-approval for that second mortgage, on the very house I gave them without asking for anything in return. All of it done behind smiles across dinner tables. All of it while calling me Mom. Mr. Clayton slid another statement across the table. "This pattern of manipulation," the investigator added quietly, "would speak volumes in court if it comes to that. And the timing? It's too clean. The Cruz gave them the perfect excuse to slip that paperwork under your door unnoticed. She wanted you legally powerless before you even understood what she was setting in motion." I nodded slowly, letting the truth settle where guilt used to live. "It's greed dressed up as concern," I said, my voice quiet. "They didn't want me gone. Just out of the way." Mr. Clayton met my eyes across the table. "And they would have gotten it, Carol. Every bit of it. Most people sign this kind of document without ever reading past the title." "But I didn't," I said. My voice didn't waver. "No, you didn't," he replied. "And now they've left a trail long enough to hang themselves with." We worked late into the evening. By the time I stepped out of his office, the sky had turned a deep navy. But I wasn't tired. I wasn't afraid. I was carried by something new. Momentum. When I got home that night, I walked through each room with a new kind of clarity. The elegant drapes Amanda picked out. The soft-close kitchen cabinets she insisted made the place feel elevated. The quartz countertops I paid extra for because she said marble was too common. I ran my hand along the surface now. This was all mine again. Every inch. Every upgrade. Every light fixture. They had bet everything on the idea that I would stay quiet. That I was too old, too soft, too desperate to cling to whatever scraps of gratitude they threw my way. But they forgot who built this house. Who paid for it. Who sacrificed. I rested my hand on the kitchen counter and whispered, "You tried to erase me while I was still alive. Now I'm erasing you, while you're still pretending to smile." Tomorrow everything would change. The house reversal would be filed. Every account locked. Every access revoked. And by the time their cruise ship docked, the world they believed was theirs would be gone. And they wouldn't even know it until they tried to walk back into it. The documents sat in front of me now. Everything was ready. The reversal of the house deed. Asset protections. A full cancellation of Amanda's financial rights. Every trick they thought they'd secured was already dismantled. They didn't even know the ground they stood on had vanished beneath them. Across the conference table, Clayton stood in silence, and the notary beside him adjusted her pen. All that remained was my signature. I hovered for just a second, not because I had doubts. Those were gone. I paused because I understood exactly what this moment meant. This wasn't just paperwork. It was a full stop to years of blind love, of saying yes, of ignoring red flags because I wanted to believe I mattered. It was a rewriting of every inch I'd given away. I signed. One page, then the next and the next. With each signature I felt something leave me, and something stronger take its place. When it was done, Clayton carefully gathered the pages. His expression didn't change much, but his voice held something different now. "It's finished, Carol. The reversal is official. The house is yours again. Their access to your finances, property, and even your utilities has been fully revoked. They can't touch a thing. I nodded, my tone even. And if they try to contest it? His eyes sharpened. Then we let them. We have everything. Transaction logs, the forged permissions, the power of attorney documents slid under your door while they were conveniently out of town. If they challenge you, they'll only dig their own hole. I took a long breath. Not a scared one. A clean one. For the first time in years, my life was mine again. My future no longer hung in someone else's pocket. As I stepped out into the evening air, I stopped for a moment on the courthouse steps. I thought about their ship, docking in 4 days. 4 days before they returned to what they thought was still under their control. But they had no clue. The locks were changed. The game was over. And they never saw it coming. The house was already sold. Finalized hours before I signed the reversal. A quiet buyer, full cash offer, no inspection delays. The money had already cleared into a new account. One they didn't even know existed. Untouchable. I smiled as the breeze brushed against my face. They thought I was weak. That silence meant surrender. But silence can be a sword too. And I had learned how to wield it. When their plane landed and their car pulled up, I was already parked 1 block away, standing quietly across the street. I watched as they returned, relaxed and sun-kissed, dragging their luggage up the walkway. Amanda stepped out first, sunglasses perched high on her head, barking about needing to book the final appointment for the mortgage approval. Jacob followed behind, head down, scrolling on his phone, disengaged but compliant as ever. They had no idea what they were walking into. Then they both froze. Parked right there in the driveway were 2 unfamiliar cars and a pair of moving vans. A young couple stood at the front door, laughing and chatting with the realtor like they already belonged. I crossed the street slowly, deliberately, not rushed, not unsure. Jacob noticed me first. "Mom?" he called, his voice caught somewhere between confusion and something darker, fear. Amanda's eyes narrowed. "What is this? Who are those people?" The couple gave them a polite smile, then followed the realtor inside. The door closed behind them. Their door now. I stopped just short of the walkway. "You won't need to worry about managing anything for me anymore," I said, clear and steady. Amanda's face reddened instantly. "What the hell does that mean?" Jacob's voice rose with panic. "Mom, what's happening? Why are there people in our house?" I let silence sit in the air, heavy and unshaken. Then I said it, "Not your house. Not anymore." Amanda stepped forward fast, voice sharpening into the pitch she always used when things didn't go her way. "You can't do this. We're refinancing. We've got contracts, legal obligations." I reached calmly into my bag and pulled out a thick folder. "These are the only contracts that matter," I said, handing it to Jacob. His hands trembled as he flipped through page after page, each one a truth they thought would stay hidden. The reversal documents. The property sale. The investigator's report. Records of Amanda's unauthorized transactions. Proof of everything. Amanda yanked the folder from his hands, skimming it with frantic, darting eyes. Her breathing turned shallow. She wasn't reading, she was hunting. For loopholes, for lifelines. "None of this will hold," she snapped. "We were helping you. You'll regret this once you calm down. We were just trying to help." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't blink. "Help," I echoed. "Is that what you call draining my retirement accounts? Gambling with a second mortgage on a house you didn't even own? Falsifying power of attorney? Hoping I'd sign away my life while you were lounging on a cruise ship?" Amanda's jaw locked, her face twitching with tension. Jacob finally spoke again, his voice cracking. "Mom, we didn't mean." "Stop." I held up a hand. One word, low and final. "You didn't mean to get caught." Neither of them responded. And for the first time I saw the truth in their eyes. It wasn't love. It wasn't guilt. It was fear, the kind you feel when the person you've underestimated stops playing dumb. I let the quiet stretch. And then I smiled. A real one. "You gambled with my trust," I said. "And you lost." Amanda's face twisted into something almost feral. "You can't just take everything from us," she spat. "We built this life together. You don't get to destroy it over a few misunderstandings." Jacob clutched the folder tighter like it could shield him. His eyes darted, unsure where to look. I stood firm. "You didn't build this life," I said. "You took it. Bit by bit. smile by smile. And you counted on me never saying no. Amanda's voice cracked, her panic louder now. We have rights. We're your family. You can't just cut us off. I felt the full weight of all the years behind me. Every silent dinner, every lie I swallowed just to keep the peace, every time I bent until I broke. But not today. I reached into my bag again and pulled out a second folder, thinner but heavier somehow. I held it up. If you want to take me to court, I said evenly, this is what you'll be facing. Amanda snatched it like an animal lashing out. Inside was the full evidence packet. Every unauthorized withdrawal. Every forged signature. Every form she had slipped beneath my door while smiling into my face. Fraud. Elder financial abuse. Coercion. Forgery. All documented. All dated. All undeniable. She flipped through the pages faster now. Her cheeks turned pale. Her hands started to shake. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I simply said, if you even attempt a lawsuit, Amanda, this becomes public record. Every bank transfer. Every manipulated document. Every attempt to steal from your own mother-in-law. I watched the words land like bricks. Heavy. Boo. Jacob's voice was barely a whisper. Amanda, what did you do? She turned to him, her voice shrill. Don't you put this on me, Jacob. You were fine with it when the money kept showing up. You knew. But he just stood there, frozen, hollowed out. His shoulders sank, his eyes wide. The facade of their marriage was crumbling right there on the sidewalk. I took a deep breath. I was your mother, Jacob, I said softly. And you turned me into your target. He looked down. And for a brief second I saw him again, the boy who once begged me to fix his toy truck. The one who cried into my lap after skinning his knees. But that child was gone. And I was done grieving him. This isn't revenge, I said. It's protection. My voice didn't shake. For the first time in years. I'm finally protecting myself. Amanda hurled the folder onto the pavement, her glare burning. You think you've won, she hissed, but you'll end up alone. I smiled again, calm, unshaken. Alone, I said softly, is better than being used. And with that I turned my back and walked away. I didn't look over my shoulder once. I drove home slowly, my hands steady on the wheel as the engine hummed beneath me. I passed through quiet streets, the soft light of sunset casting gold across the rooftops. By the time I reached my modest little apartment building, the sky had faded into dusk. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't fancy. But it was mine. Entirely mine. As I locked the door behind me, I let my breath settle. I pictured the scene still playing out back at the house. My old house, now someone else's beginning. The moving trucks. The new couple unpacking, smiling as they stepped into their new life. And Jacob and Amanda, stranded on the driveway where their perfect plans had crumbled. Their home, gone. Their lies, exposed. The illusion, shattered. The phone buzzed once on the counter. A text message. I didn't need to check the number. I already knew. Mom, please. Can we talk? This isn't what I wanted. Please. I stared at the message. He hadn't called me Mom in person in months. But now, with the game over and nothing left to drain from me, he remembered who I was again. I didn't answer. A second message came moments later. I'm sorry. Amanda got carried away. He pushed me. You know how she is. I never wanted to hurt you. I could hear his voice in the words. Desperate. Scrambling. Trying to rewrite the past now that there was nothing left to gain. My thumb hovered over the screen. But I didn't reply. As I had finally learned the lesson. You only miss me now that I said no. I set the phone down, face first on the table, and walked to the window. Outside I could hear children playing somewhere down the block. Light laughter, honest and simple. Behind me my apartment was still. Clean. Safe. Empty in the best way. No tension. No schemes. No one waiting to twist my kindness into a leash. They thought I couldn't live without them. But the truth? I had been suffocating under their weight for years. Every gift I gave Jacob. Every sacrifice. Every long hour and dollar poured into that house, into their life, had turned into a weapon they used against me. But standing here now, stripped of everything I thought I needed to hold on to, I had never felt so free. Let them rage. Let them scramble. Let them point fingers and rewrite stories. I owed them nothing. And in that nothing I found everything. I was finally beyond their reach. I whispered it to the quiet room like a prayer only meant for me. Quiet doesn't mean weak. And for the first time I believed it.